welcome to the In the Slot podcast. Next week, episode 14. Well in the swings of the off season now. Now's the moment when we've got the anticipation kicking in. What happens with free agency? What happens with trades? What happens with the draft? We got a mock draft this week, so we'll take a look at that, get everyone's opinions. As usual, it's me, Josh, joined by Henry, Connor, and Chris. And what we always do at the start, Connor, why don't you take us through last week's In the Slot Buster?
Yeah. So if you missed it last week, I gave everyone a cryptic clue. So for all of you listening at home, and for Josh, Henry, and Chris to break apart a cryptic clue, which is aimed to break down a player who or a player or someone who's involved in the NFL. So you guys can guess and have a guess at who my cryptic clue is. So to run over last week's cryptic clue, it was, I like to film all this land I have. So over to you guys. What did you think it was? Oh, I've got a shake of the head first from Chris. Did he not get it?
We're all looking sheepish. I don't think any of us have got it.
None of you have.
I think
I reacted on the pod last week.
Yeah,
saying that I got it. And now I completely cannot remember what I thought it was.
Right, so this is a live reaction then, because it shows how much attention you pay to the game midweek.
That's terrible, isn't it? That's terrible. So I did have a guess of sorts, Connor. It's not the specific answer, but I went down the line of filming, and I thought of the synonym of recording. I know it's not the player, but I thought of Patrick Ricard, the fullback. I know it's not him, but I just thought I'd give you some semblance of a guess, whilst the rest of us have offered nothing.
The only thing I had was working along the lines of filming, like you said. I was trying to think of anything related to a camera, but we've already had Cam Newton. I thought Cameron Sutton, Cameron Jordan, but nothing really fitted the second part. So you stumped me on this one, Connor.
Oh, interesting. I actually genuinely thought Henry had it as well.
He definitely did.
I'm pretty confident I did have it. And then I've just forgotten throughout the week and didn't write it down. So I mean, it doesn't count. It doesn't count, but I think I'm going to kick myself when you tell us.
Yeah, all right. So I did go straight back down the filming route and stuck with Cam. And then
I've got it. I remembered.
Oh, I know it now. I know it now.
I won't do the second part then. And I'll let you get the second name.
I did get it, but this doesn't count, obviously. But I did go through the same process of Cam, and then with land, I thought Rams rookie running back Cam Akers.
Yep, that's exactly it.
But I won't count it because I got the clue first of all. But
but I do remember you being confident in it. I do remember you saying that you were quite chuffed that you got it because you actually liked the clue as well. So yeah, it was acres of land. So
picking myself.
Yeah, you should all be disappointed. I thought that was one of the easy ones as well. So, yeah, we'll come back very shortly. I don't know when, but we'll be coming back for this week's In the Slot. So everyone can have a guess this week as well at what this week's clue is.
Yeah, thanks, Connor. Definitely. Chris and I both kicking ourselves there. It's such a simple one when you think about it. It's a bit longer, the wait for this week's In the Slot Buster. The reason for that is because now we're going to go through the mock draft, which I did. So hopefully if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be seeing the screen on the graphics. You can see exactly who was picked when, but I'll talk the guys through it. They've already seen the mock draft. But we'll go through each pick and everyone will interject if they've got any questions or, they had any differences of opinion or, want to pose a question to the group, and we'll kind of go through that way. First pick, obviously the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think this one is set in stone by everyone. It's Trevor Lawrence, quarterback from Clemson. No doubts, I don't think in anyone's mind that that's what will happen. Second pick, New York Jets at the moment picking there. I put Zach Wilson, quarterback from BYU. I think this one is less about which player goes at number 2 and which team picks that player. Zach Wilson really, in my opinion, separated himself from Justin Fields. Does anyone have any opinions on the top 3 quarterbacks and where they sit? Henry, looking at you.
Yeah, for me, and I think previously on on the pod a few weeks ago, I said that Fields was still my 2. I'm the same as you now, Josh. I have them ranked 1, 2, 3 with Lawrence, Wilson, and Fields, just as you do have picked in this mock. And I do feel that the Jets would go for Wilson, particularly as a Jets fit and as a sort of face of franchise. I think they would go Wilson at this point. I guess the only thing that could buck this trend is signing a big veteran free agent for the Jets, a la Deshaun Watson. But yeah, for me, I think the top 2 is both the way I would go and the way that I think it will play out going forward. I think one thing I'd like to mention is just, we've talked about it, the quarterbacks who have had real success recently. You think of Mahomes, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers. They've got incredible tools. They're athletic outside the pocket. They've got huge arms in terms of arm strength and ball placement. And I think that's something that is now more required than ever. All 4 of the top quarterbacks in this class have the potential to have those tools. So it's an interesting which one you pick.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's 2 big knocks which people have on Zach Wilson. One is he had a couple of seasons, his first 2, where he didn't complete the whole season because of injury niggles. And then at BYU, the competition's not as great, but I'm pleased you brought up Patrick Mahomes, because Texas Tech, when he was playing there, you look at that level of competition, it hasn't affected his NFL level. So, yeah, I'd be very interested to see what happens. We ran a poll actually today at the point of recording, and 50% of people thought the Bears would be picking at number 2. So interesting. Not what I expected. I thought maybe the Texans with Deshaun Watson to the Jets, but yeah, watch that space. Maybe the Bears make a big move there. Third pick, Miami Dolphins. This is a first non-quarterback, Jamar Chase, wide receiver from LSU. Big debate about who the top wide receiver is, but for me, Jamar Chase still. Anyone want to jump in on that one? No? Oh,
yeah,
Chris?
no, I'll take that. Obviously, Jamar Chase sat out this year, so all the hype was on Devonta Smith. And in terms of comparing their body types, they're different receivers. I think the bigger body Jamar Chase would fit in better in Miami. They've already got some slight receivers. I don't think Devonta Smith, although he showed great hands in the College Bowl, he's got all the talent as well. I think there was a lot of hype about Jamar Chase, and he arguably would have been the Heisman or number 1 receiver anyway if he had played this year. So I think I like that. I like Jamar Chase to Dolphins.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fits a mindset there that they want to go with. It's got to be tempting to take an Alabama receiver with Tua as a quarterback. That's kind of helped the storyline for most people mocking there. But yeah, for me, Jamar Chase, I would be surprised if it was anything else. Number 4, Atlanta Falcons, taking Justin Fields from Ohio State. Number 5, I've got the Cincinnati Bengals taking Penei Sewell. For me, this one's a big one. Rashawn Slater has been a big riser at the offensive tackle spot, but Penei Sewell just has the athleticism that NFL teams are really looking for. Seahawks have a history of taking defensive linemen just to get that athleticism, next level blocking, and I think Penei Sewell, probably his intangibles take him at that point, or his athleticism rather. Number 6 is the Philadelphia Eagles. For me, that's where Devonta Smith finally goes. It is a bit of a fall considering he was the Heisman winner, like you pointed out, Chris, but I think the Eagles is a perfect spot for any receiver in this class. Henry, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, sure. So, really like how this mock's shaping up. I think from 3 to 6 are all teams that could look to trade down. And I think your point there, Josh, is really interesting with the Bengals. How big of a gap do they see between Penei Sewell and the next tackle? Probably Rashawn Slater. I know Darisaw is getting a lot of hype at the moment as well. There are teams that are going to want to trade up, whether to get Fields or to get Trey Lance. And I think those teams, I think Miami taking a non-quarterback at 3 would be a big mistake. I think the trade down value you can get in this draft and still get a top receiver in the top 10 is very, very possible. But yeah, I think it's gonna fall on how much of a gap do you see between the guy available right there and the guy available maybe 3, 4, 5 picks later.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And we've seen such a trade-happy league developing this off-season. So I would be very surprised if draft night didn't look very trade-happy too. And you're right, there's some clear areas where if you want to strengthen your team, you could move up in this draft, and yeah, absolutely, that's the range. Number 7, you talked about Trey Lance. For me, the Detroit Lions at 7, they pull the trigger, they take Trey Lance, and suddenly that's the top 4 quarterbacks off the board. That one will be really interesting to see what happens there, because at number 8, and this is a start for me where I really view teams that could be trading down as well. Carolina Panthers at number 8. I've put them Rashawn Slater, an offensive tackle. They've got 2 pending free agents at offensive tackle. We'll talk a bit about them later. But, you know, if you've got a chance to get one of the top guys in the draft, I think we've seen offensive line and how much that means to teams now. Number 9, I've got the Denver Broncos taking a cornerback. Most people think they'll go for Caleb Farley, but I actually think Patrick Surtain is the better quarterback of the 2, even though he doesn't necessarily fit the Denver Broncos scheme and what you would expect. I think you've got to go with the best talent available. So that's really what I see there. Number 10, that's Caleb Farley for me to the Dallas Cowboys. Be interesting to see what happens on draft night with those 2, but the clear top 2 cornerbacks, I think, in this draft class. Then number 11, it's the New York Giants, and Jalen Waddle, wide receiver from Alabama, goes here. My personal favorite wide receiver for what he brings to a team. You know, he does so much. He's a Swiss Army knife, like they always talk about. Can play in the slot, can play as your deep threat. Giants really need to bolster their wide receiver core.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of comparisons between Waddle and Smith. That sort of Waddle is basically the Ruggs player from this Alabama offense this year. He's the speedster. He's expected to run low 4.3s and be able to do everything you just said, Josh. Take a top off a defense, but also move around a lot. He's a lot better after the catch than Ruggs. A lot better route runner than Ruggs already. So I think, you know, overall, there's not really much debate that he's a better player at this stage than Ruggs. And interesting, Josh, I think you've only got 2 defensive players in your top 13, and that would be definitely the 2 spots that I'd see, and that position as well with Surtain and Farley.
Yeah, and definitely this draft class, just like most of them, it feels like you've got such depth on the defensive side of the ball that it devalues the position, but also the way the NFL goes too. So yeah, I would be very surprised if we see anyone else from the defensive side really creep in above that position. Maybe one of the linebackers, but they're off-ball linebackers. So yeah, it'd be surprising. But then at 12, I've got the final of the top 3 offensive tackles, Christian Darrisaw going to the 49ers. Number 13, I see Elijah Vera Tucker, inside offensive lineman from USC, going to the Chargers. I think they've got to do something to protect Justin Herbert. What do you think, Connor? Do you think they can go with anything other than an offensive lineman in this draft?
No, I think you're right. Yeah, he like if they want to see that potential out of him, they're going to need to have much more protection for him. So yeah, no, I think that would be the best route for them to go down.
Yeah, absolutely. And then 14 for me, it's the Minnesota Vikings taking Micah Parsons. And honestly, this was probably the pick which I struggled with personally the most. I just couldn't see where the value lied for the Vikings in the draft. If I was them, I would be looking to trade down 100%. And they've got Kendrick, so you get Micah Parsons, suddenly you've probably got the best linebacker tandem in the NFL, but it's at one of the least valued positions. And the other thing here as well, Micah Parsons may be a massive draft day faller. He's under some sexual assault allegations at the moment, so we'll see what happens there. Definitely a very talented player, but we'll see definitely what happens there.
I think that's a good comment where you make about the Vikings looking to trade down. We saw in the second half of the season they were performing like a much better team, a dark horse for the playoffs for all of us, I think. Obviously, Dalvin Cook, Kirk Cousins, the breakout of Justin Jefferson, superstar Adam Thielen. The second half of the season, they looked a whole different team. And I think they're better than pick 14. So I think to move down and perhaps strengthen somewhere and get a bit more value and a few more picks, add some depth, I think that's probably a smart move for the Vikings.
Yeah, cheers, Chris. And yeah, and equally, you made a good point when you listed the passing options in their attack. There's one glaring hole. Kyle Rudolph, he's a top half tight end in the league, but next spot for me, that's where Kyle Pitts finally goes. He's had this draft day slide in my mock draft. He goes 15 to the Patriots. I think the Vikings would have been looking very long and hard at him. And I actually imagine a team may trade up for a tight end if they want Pitts. But it just speaks to the value of the position, doesn't it? I know how we view tight ends, but Henry, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think, a lot the NFL is influenced by what's most recently happened and what happens in the playoffs. And you see the two teams that have made the playoffs with Kelsey, Gronk, all the weapons that surround them. You've got Brait and OJ Howard on the Bucks, but also, Tyreek Hill and the vast array of weapons that the Bucks had at receiver with Evans, Godwin. And even though they had those players, they still went out and got Antonio Brown. And I think it shows the value of having a third, fourth, fifth option. Particularly when the Bucks were double teaming Hill and Kelsey in the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I definitely think adding another playmaker to that Vikings offense could be really fun. But Pitts at 15 seems like good value.
Yeah, and I completely agree, Henry, and I think probably, as Connor will attest to, a top quality tight end, what that adds to your offense is so much more than so many other positions. But the thing which the NFL seems to be lacking at the moment is true evaluation skills of these top guys. We haven't seen tight ends really pan out as per their draft perspective. Since Eric Ebron went to the Lions, there was a massive bust. Evan Ingram's been so. All these guys who we really see as the future at the tight end position, they don't always pan out. So that's what I think some of the concern could be there too. But moving on, and at number 16, sorry, Connor, I talked about tight ends and I didn't go to you.
You've got to come to me. It's just silly. No, what I think the one thing with that tight end role, which makes it so specific at this point in a draft as well, is that you don't get a finished article straight away, because the requirement of a tight end in the NFL isn't just one position. It isn't just it fulfills so much within that. It creates an extra blocker, an extra pass catcher. It should be that person that the quarterback can trust. There's so much to it for a tight end that transition into the NFL can be a little bit rocky. Like you said, we've seen it with Evan Ingram coming in as well, and but obviously you see some of the older tight ends do absolutely phenomenally, and when they are phenomenal, they really do make a huge impact on their team. So obviously it is great value to get one when you can, but it is a difficult prospect because you do demand so much out of them to consider them a successful tight end.
Yeah, let's bring it to fantasy for a second. Whilst you've jumped in on this, let's disrupt the mock draft right in the middle. Talk about Kyle Pitts. Next year in fantasy, what round are you considering Kyle Pitts as?
Me?
Regardless of team. Yeah, go on, Connor.
Just because I took a tight end in the second last.
Yeah, exactly.
Or 2.1, wasn't it? If we want to be specific. No, I think you take it late because you can't. I don't think you can necessarily trust how much they're actually going to get in terms of how many receptions they're actually going to get. I do think that there's a potential he might be used more as an extra blocker initially, with the option to go off and get some catches rather than the other way around.
Yeah. What about for you, Henry? Where do you view Kyle Pitts?
I think if Pitts goes to the right offense, in terms of talent, no doubt, instant top 5-7 tight end in the NFL. I think he's that good, that athletic. I think he'll run fast, and he's very much in the, I think, sort of Darren Waller mold, where you can put him out wide, you can put him as a blocker, but I expect him to run maybe mid 4.5s or something, even at that size. So I would think he'd be a really good fantasy option. You've got him mocked to the Patriots. That would not excite me as a fantasy option, depending on what they do at quarterback. But for example, if we're looking at the Vikings that we mentioned, the pick before, or maybe even an offense like the Cowboys or Broncos, I think that would be something where you'd be looking at him as a top 5 fantasy tight end, potentially as a rookie.
Yeah, let's see how that one pans out. And yeah, Darren Waller is absolutely the person who I think he translates the most to in the NFL, and we've seen his success this season. But bringing it back to the mock draft, pick number 16, just about halfway through, I've got the Cardinals taking J.C. Horn, cornerback from South Carolina. This is more based on what a cornerback brings to your team. I think J.C. Horn, top talent, definitely a first round pick, but that speaks to the passing league that we're in. 17, Las Vegas Raiders taking Kwity Paye, edge from Michigan. I think everyone thinks that the Raiders are going to take Kwity Paye. This one was a consensus pick, I'm sure, across the board. 17's right where he lands, edge on a team that needs an edge, that values that type of edge rusher. It's written that he'll go there. Then pick number 18, we've got the Dolphins, second pick of the draft, taking Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, linebacker from Notre Dame. Definitely an outside linebacker, more of a pass defensive linebacker than a run stopper. And I think he's a really good talent, just at a devalued position. Then you've got the run on linebackers. 19, Washington football team, take Zaven Collins, the linebacker from Tulsa, who was a massive riser to start the year. Be really interesting to see what happens with him. Again, a devalued position. Then pick number 20, Chicago Bears take Mac Jones, quarterback from Alabama. This is probably the one which, if you don't know so much about the draft, you're probably wondering, where did Mac Jones fall? For me, 20 to the Bears. Chris, any thoughts on Mac Jones to that team?
Personally, I think he goes higher than 20. I'm not sure that he falls there. Whether he fits the Bears system, again, I'm not convinced. I think Patriots might be a better fit, potentially the Falcons, but I can't see them taking him up at 4. But I do like him. I do like him to New England.
Yeah, good point. Henry, what about you?
Yeah, I wouldn't have any faith in him succeeding in Chicago. I think that's a tough environment, a tough division. A lot of turnover on that roster, probably losing their best receiver. I wouldn't love that fit for Mac Jones, I don't think. But who knows what Chicago's going to do? They've been involved in trade rumors for Wentz after acquiring Foles, who won the Super Bowl after taking over Wentz's team. It's a very strange situation. I have no idea what they're going to sort out, but as a Packers fan, I wouldn't be terrified of seeing Mac Jones join the division at the moment, really.
Yeah, the more we get into this offseason, the more the Bears seem like the team that don't know what they're doing, don't they? And yeah, taking a quarterback that definitely wouldn't work in their scheme, in their division in the NFL, that wouldn't surprise me. So yeah, let's see what happens. Maybe they pick higher, maybe they take one of the premier talents, but I think they've got to be all in on a quarterback to have a chance. Then 21, I see the Colts upgrading that defense even more, picking up Asante Samuel Jr., cornerback from Florida State. 22, Tennessee Titans taking Gregory Rousseau, edge rusher from Miami, had a very productive year.
I thought that was interesting, Josh. What made you? Was it more of a Raiders fit that made you go Paye over Rousseau? Because I think most rankings I have see Rousseau 1 as the edge. Do you like Paye over Rousseau, or was it more of a team fit that you were going for there?
Yeah, the thing for me, and this is the reason why I was kind of speeding off into the next one, is because Gregory Rousseau has benefited from being opposite Jalen Phillips, who I will talk about a bit more, because for me, he goes next to the New York Jets, and that's the biggest downside. If you exist on a defensive line where you don't get double teamed by inferior offensive line talent within the college football game, you haven't had the chance to prove yourself to the same degree that Kwity Paye has as the premier edge rusher in Michigan. We also see Michigan edge rushers have consistent success when they come to the NFL level. So, for me, those are just those couple of bits, but there's just something. There's, the athletic build of Paye. I just think he fits that mold more of what NFL defenses are looking for. Mike Mayock is a big prospective believer in that aspect of the game, a player's build and what that fits. So for me, it just fits more with the Raiders. But yeah, I could make the argument for Gregory Rousseau. But yeah, the 23rd pick for me is the Jets taking Jalen Phillips. And this guy, talent-wise, definite first-round pick. He's incredible. If you watch any of the Miami defensive highlights, you can see he consistently produces pressures. He leads to so many pressure sacks, and Gregory Rousseau was one of the bigger benefactors of that on the team. But the biggest question mark for Phillips, he used to play at UCLA. He had a few injuries. He actually quit football for a while, then transferred to Miami. So, you know, he had one too many concussions, a niggling injury, a couple of niggling injuries. And, you know, that was too much. I think NFL teams are really going to be concerned there. But, you know, the talent often outweighs it. I could see him as a late round, first rounder in this draft for sure. 24, I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers taking Samuel Cosmi, tackle from Texas. To be completely honest, I don't like Samuel Cosmi much. I didn't like this pick. I wouldn't be making this pick if I was the Steelers. But equally, they have to take a tackle. They have to take an offensive lineman, surely, Chris, right? Who do you go for here?
Yeah, I mean, we all saw the struggles in the run game, certainly in the latter half of the season. Offensive lineman, whether it's interior or on the outside, I think it has to be the O-line. Big Ben, I'm pretty sure is going to be back for one final year. There was no productivity in the running game. I know we mentioned a running back, Najee Harris or Etienne before, but it has to be the O-line. The second half of the season really showed that we need to freshen up.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with Mac Jones not there, there's not much consideration to think about quarterback or anything either. 25th pick for me is the Jacksonville Jaguars, taking Alex Leatherwood. You just took Trevor Lawrence. Let's get him an offensive tackle. Put someone in there with him. Alabama offensive line. You know he's built the way to play in the NFL. Will need some polishing in the pass game, but very good talent. I'm actually surprised he fell this far in my mock. I definitely like him over Samuel Cosmi, but I just don't know where the two land on draft night. 26, Cleveland Browns, taking Christian Barmore, the first defensive tackle. And I think this is a poor draft move, but the Browns are a very tough team to mock at the moment. I wouldn't pick that either. I prefer Davion Nixon. But yeah, interesting one. When we get to this end of the draft, it becomes a bit tough to make predictions. 27 is the Baltimore Ravens, and they take Wyatt Davis. And for me, this was a no-brainer. I love Wyatt Davis. I think he is the best guard in the class. Elijah Vera Tucker has a lot of flexibility, which brings him up the draft class, and he went earlier. But I think Wyatt Davis just comes with such pedigree. If you watched him in the college championship games and the semi-final, honestly, he was a class above every other offensive lineman there. So yeah, really, really interested to see what he can do with Lamar Jackson in the Ravens in this scenario. 28, the Saints take Joseph Asai, edge from Texas. Again, you know, edge rushers in this class, there's really 2 or 3 that I consider premier talents. After that, you're going for need rather than ability, in my opinion. But you've got upside, of course. 29, Green Bay Packers, a pick you want to talk about, I'm sure, Henry. You're getting an interior defensive lineman, a defensive tackle, Davion Nixon, who, in my opinion, is the best defensive tackle in the class. What do you think? No wide receiver, no cornerback?
Yeah, you've done this deliberately. You just want the reaction, don't you? No, I'd be really, really disappointed with this pick. The 2 positions that you just listed there, Josh, are so much higher on my priority list for the Packers, both in terms of need, but also in terms of value and what they're going to bring to the team. The 2 things that we just saw from the Packers are what happens when our second cornerback gets targeted relentlessly and Kevin King getting roasted, whereas Jair Alexander had, from a yardage perspective, the best game in the history of the playoffs, allowing -3 yards. So that second corner slot has to be one of the primary focuses. If we don't address it in free agency, I'd like to see a corner. The other option is wide receiver or pass catcher. We saw what happens when Devontae Adams is blanketed. So even when he's allowed receptions, they've got a guy over the top constantly. We did struggle for that consistent pass catcher who can win early. We have downfield threats, but I need a receiver here, Josh. I need a receiver or corner. I don't like this pick at all, and I'd be really disappointed if this was the direction we went. I can see us trading down, getting a corner or wide receiver at the start of the second. Perhaps if a team was coming back up for a quarterback, something that Seattle's been famous for doing, but I could see the Packers doing that this year.
Yeah, and that was my thought process. I went with, what do I genuinely think would happen, and what would that team do, much to the dismay of their fans, as you just depicted. I do think the Packers address cornerback in free agency. I think where they sit in the draft, free agency has to be the way to go if you're trying to keep that playoff window open, or Super Bowl window even. I could see a wide receiver, but I don't really like the other guys. I like Kadarius Toney a lot. I love him a lot. But he's your slot guy, and you've got Devontae Adams, and I just don't see the fit there the same way. I'm sure you could work him in. You've got talent, bring it. But yeah, I think look forward to being disappointed on draft day night. I think the best solution as a Packers fan, as it's always been as a Seahawks fan, is they trade down, like you said, and get some more value. And then you can start to YouTube some of those players that they end up taking. And maybe one of them becomes a good player in the NFL. But yeah, then we got the Buffalo Bills at number 30. I gave him a tackle, Jalen Mayfield. This is really where, as a team, you just desperately try to find a piece to fit your missing hole. And I think upgrade the offensive line, give Josh Allen a bit more time to throw the ball. Not sold on Jalen Mayfield massively, but it would be a good pick, I'm sure. Chris?
I think if they don't go offensive tackle here, I think similar to the Steelers, we saw very little in productivity in the run game, and we just mentioned him, Najee Harris. I think the Bills, they've got Devin Singletary, not very good in my opinion. Zach Moss, they drafted obviously rookie, bit disappointing, very disappointing. I think if they don't go offensive tackle, Najee Harris should be a golden here.
Wow, bold predictions. I would be very surprised if any of the running backs make it into the first round. If any of them do, I agree, it's Najee Harris because of flexibility with pass catching. But I think if you're the Bills and you're sat there wondering what's going to put you over the next hurdle to be a Super Bowl winner or Super Bowl contender in the Super Bowl, is a running back really the piece? I don't think so. I disagree with you wholeheartedly, to be honest, Chris, but could be proven wrong. Let's see.
I think though, we saw what Josh Allen could do with the current formation, the current roster. So we know he's got an arm. We know he's got he can run it as well. He's got Stephon Diggs. Gabriel Davis had a good year. Cole Beasley is always ever present. I think like I said, if they don't go offensive tackle, I think running back is the next skill piece they need to add to take that next step offensively.
Yeah. I could see them trading up for Kyle Pitts, to be honest, or Kadarius Toney could have fitted here. I do think someone on the offensive side of the football has to be the play here. You've got to elevate that. Yeah, maybe it is Najee Harris. He brings a lot to the passing game. Actually, let's be fair to him. So yeah, good points, Chris. Let's see what happens there. We got the last two picks. Kansas City Chiefs take an interior offensive lineman, Creed Humphrey. This one was a tough one. They essentially get an interior offensive lineman at a top quality back this season, almost like a draft pick, because obviously one of their guards went off to be a doctor and help out with COVID. Maybe they don't need an interior offensive lineman, but that offensive line needs some help somewhere, and Creed Humphrey would be a great move. Offensive tackle looks a bit weak here for me. So yeah, I really don't know what the Chiefs would do, but Creed Humphrey was my guess. And then what do you give a team that just won a Super Bowl, who has everything, but for the next year and a half, maybe two? I went for an edge rusher because maybe Shaq Barrett's not there. Gave him Jason Oweh, edge from Penn State, but who knows? On reflection, Henry, anything which you're sat there thinking I would have done differently if I was a GM, or
I've got a good trend that I think that you've captured in this, and that I think will happen. I think that the NFL do look around the NFL, and they do copy lessons and trends that are going on. And I think the Joe Burrow serious injury and his O-line troubles, I think, will reverberate around the NFL. In this draft, Josh, you've got the Jags taking their quarterback of the future and then picking up top offensive line talent. You've got the Bengals picking Penei Sewell, number 5, top offensive line talent. You've got the Chargers picking offensive line. You've got the Chiefs picking offensive line. So lots of those young quarterbacks, the best quarterbacks in the NFL, the Bills as well, you've got solidifying that offensive line to protect their quarterbacks. It's also just been on national spotlight what happens to the Chiefs without Eric Fisher and the Packers without Bakhtiari. That's contributed massively to the Bucs Super Bowl success. So I like the way that you've matched up the offensive line with the young quarterbacks. I can really see that happening on draft night.
Great. Well, that's the end of the mock draft. More to come in the future. We'll be doing one where we split up the league by 4. We all have a go, include some trades in there. But please, if you've got any opinions, if you think your team's going to draft anyone, if you want to take the mick out of me for my opinions, please do give us a comment. Send it around. Let us know who you would have taken. Let us know where you think the trades happen. We'd love to hear it. But Connor, hand it back to you. In the Slotbusters, episode number 13, or game week number 13, I should say. What's this week's in the Slotbuster?
Yeah, absolutely. So after last week's win for me, I think hopefully there'll be one that hopefully you guys can start to guess, and hopefully the people at home can start to guess as well. We're hoping that you don't only comment on our mock draft, but you also comment on what you think the In the Slotbuster is, for a chance to win a nice prize from us, which we'll go through in a second. But before I do that, I will take you through what the cryptic clue is for this week. So I'll say it twice to give everyone a chance, and then we'll go on from there. So this week's cryptic clue is: Rocky shouted my name once, and I'm the child of a very common name. So Rocky shouted my name once, and I'm the child of a very common name.
Was that a classic Henry, say I've got it, then forget it by the time next week comes around?
He's just all confident.
Just remind me the first name, and then I'll write it down. I'll write it down this time. You've got a talent for these clues, though, Connor.
So yeah, everyone get your guesses in. We're hoping you can break it down. Like we said at the beginning of the pod, the idea of it is that it's a cryptic clue that breaks down the name of someone who's involved with the NFL, wherever they might be. Could be a player, a coach, commentator, in college, about to go into the draft, or an ex-pro, whatever it might be. And if you do comment and you get it right, even if you get it wrong, just be our first commenter. You actually might win a prize. So, but if you get it right, there is the chance for a prize to win a small Riddell pocket helmet. So make sure you get your comments in, and we'll go from there. So yeah, that's in the Slotbusters for this week.
As long as your guess is NFL or pod related, and you come up with an inventive way of how it may slightly fit it, then there's a prize to be won, which is, just like Connor said, the mini Pocket Pro helmet for Riddell. Team of your choice will send that through to you. Next on the slot of what we're going to talk about this week, free agents, some player updates. Biggest one, obviously, what everyone is talking about, JJ Watt, been released by the Houston Texans. Really good video message from him, in my opinion, thanking the Houston Texans fan base, looking forward. He's obviously been enjoying himself in free agency thus far. Henry, do you have any ideas on where you think he's going to land?
Yeah, I think it sounds like there's a cluster of teams that are interested in, that he's interested in joining. I think the Green Bay link is there with him having attended college in Wisconsin, and he used to attend Packers games apparently, I think. So I think that's definitely a possibility. But I'm sure Chris can talk about this, and the lure of joining his brothers in Pittsburgh might be a very cool idea to have all the brothers on the same team. So how would you feel about that, Chris?
Oh, you have to love that. We know what the Watt brothers already do. Well, one of the Watt brothers at least does to our roster, and to have JJ Watt, who's absolutely fantastic, one of the greatest players we've seen, certainly in recent years. If someone as good as that, as big as that, becomes available, you have to try and make a move. I'm not convinced that we have the cap space in Pittsburgh to make a move, but I think he's probably going to take a salary cut wherever he goes. So throw your hat in the ring. I'd love him. I'd love him.
Yeah, and it's obvious that basically every NFL team feel the same way as a Steelers fan would. The thing which is more glaringly obvious is there's so many potential links out there. We ran 2 separate polls on Twitter, which listed 6 different NFL teams, and other was the majority winner every single time. All we know is he's going to go somewhere other than the Texans. He will be in the NFL next season, but who knows where. Wherever he is, what a benefit to a defense that would be. Connor, I can't talk about JJ Watt and not go to you. I already snubbed you on the tight ends. I know you're a massive fan of JJ Watt since you watched him.
Well, he was trending on Twitter, wasn't he, this week with the Browns, which was one of the highest, interest, I suppose, at the moment, or fan interest, which would be really interesting for that team. But I do also love the sub story as well of Chris and the Steelers, because it would be really nice to see brothers playing together. Those sort of stories are really nice, and obviously it's not all about what's nice for it, but I think it is really interesting about the Browns, to be sure.
Yeah. And speaking of the Browns, Odell Beckham.
Personally, I think he's more likely. Sorry, he's more likely, I think, to go to the Browns than to the Steelers. That's what I think.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe you're right, Chris. And if there's
the
one
marketing potential for the Steelers, they could earn all that cap space back. Talk about the brothers.
Unfortunately, the cap doesn't work like that. But don't worry, that's why you're on the pod and you're not a GM, Connor. Maybe one day you could get there. But unfortunately, marketing efforts don't decrease your salary cap space.
It's a shame. It's a real shame.
Just to note that for any of the rookie GMs out there who listen to the pod and thought that may be true.
All my applications for my GM roles in the NFL, because you know what?
Dispel that rumor. One thing which you and Chris definitely could do is have some sort of combined achievement for how many segues you could ruin of mine, because we were talking about the Browns. I was going to talk about the next group, which is Odell Beckham from the Browns and Stephon Gilmore from the Patriots, 2 players who are supposedly or reportedly on the trade block. We talked about it, trade happy NFL right now. What does that say about it, Henry? That those teams, do you think that's real? Do you think Odell and Stephon Gilmore are on the trade block?
I really think one of them is, and I really don't think the other one is. I think Odell is just rumours at this point. Haven't heard anything concrete. I think he'd have a decent market, but coming off that injury, that might decrease it. But I fully expect him to stay with the Browns. They made the playoffs without him, and I think talk of the offense being significantly better without him is overhyped. I think Mayfield played a lot better, and I think they've got a lot of potential going into next year. Gilmore, I think, definitely could be acquired, possibly for a second round pick, perhaps. I think the Patriots are in a very clear rebuilding mode now, and I think Gilmore would be a player that a lot of playoff teams would be interested in having. We talk about it all the time, the prevalence of the pass game. You need 2 good corners, as Kevin King showed. So I think Gilmore could definitely be traded this offseason, and that seems to make sense.
Yeah, watch this space, and I think if anything is for sure, some big players in this league, big name players, will be going to other teams through trade, through release, like JJ Watt. We'll see what happens there.
And don't you want to see that with like you said, it probably is just rumors at the moment, but everyone would love to see, like, whatever team you support, everyone loved seeing Odell at his absolute best, the one-handed grabs, the superstar catches. It's what got a lot of people into the sport around that time. It's like everyone would love to see him back at his best. And that's not happening at the Browns, is it? So even if it is just rumors, it is really interesting to see if there's a potential that he might go somewhere else.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, Connor. For years, we've seen players who are the top tier talents just suffer on teams that have no chance. JJ Watt is a perfect example, being stuck with the Texans with such limited experience of ever playing in a Super Bowl, in the playoffs. Finally, these players, it feels like they got what they want as well as NFL teams. So it seems like everyone's winning right now, just not a fan base. If you're a Texans or a Bears fan, probably at the moment. Deshaun Watson is the name that's been out there for so long. How on earth has he not been traded yet? Like, what is going on? Are teams waiting to see what happens in free agency? Are the Texans being greedy? Are other teams trying to be too smart about it and trade a couple of other things? Have the Texans maybe not made their minds up on the NFL quarterback prospects in the draft? What do you think, Henry? What's the big factor there?
I actually think the Texans believe they can keep him. And I think they're probably willing to do whatever they can to make that a reality. I think that is genuinely the reason that he hasn't been traded. I don't think he will play for the Texans. I think he'd probably sit out rather than play, but I don't think the Texans have given up yet. And perhaps the new coaching staff and the new GM are just refusing to listen to offers or accept a trade at the moment. But we'll see. This is the big one, isn't it? I feel like this could be one of the biggest compensation packages we see, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens. I've seen some crazy 4-team trade packages thrown around like we see in the NBA as well, but who knows? Let's see.
I'm so pleased you talked about 4-team trade package, because as a Seahawks fan, I definitely saw that, and somehow in that scenario, the Seahawks ended up with Jimmy Garoppolo and Nick Bosa and a first in 2024 or something. It was possibly the worst trade I've ever seen, and they were like, who doesn't win or who says no, and it was clear it was the Seahawks. But do you think that stance is going to burn the Texans, Chris, if they wait around and they desperately try to negotiate with him as soon as they actually are open to listening to offers? Surely there's no way they could spin it that Watson wants to stay with them, because they're all in on that train. And now maybe he doesn't, clearly, and then the offers would get reduced.
I really agree with what Henry says. I think the Texans backroom staff are of the belief that he will stay, and they are not trading him for love nor money or picks for that matter. But I think they are. I think obviously we know that once Watson wants out, I think the Texans want too much for him, and I think your comment about teams trying to be too smart and trying to get him too cheap, it's kind of just hardball against hardball. And I think you're quite right. I think it might come down to them getting less than what they wanted, or Deshaun Watson sitting out.
Yeah, and definitely for the NFL fans, we don't want to see Watson sitting out. Yeah, so let's watch that one. Hopefully it develops, and yeah, it could be some really interesting teams if Watson ended up there. Connor, why don't you take us back on the In the Slot Buster? Leave us on that at the end of this week.
Absolutely. So yeah, as per tradition, I'll take you through it one more time, get you one more chance to really think about what your guess is for this week. So the cryptic clue for game week 13 of the In the Slot Busters is Rocky shouted my name once, and I'm the child of a very common name. So if you do want to take part in this, we really want to hear, exactly like you heard at the beginning of the podcast, exactly how the guys break through, where they went with this clue, what led them to what names they want to guess. You don't necessarily have to do that. You can if you want. It's great to hear what people's thoughts are, but also the other side of it as well is that we want to hear just what your guesses are. So if you do just want to guess just with a sole name, no explanation, please do that on either Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. And we'll definitely bring it up on the podcast as well, referencing you or your username. So yeah, do get entering. And yeah, make sure you do like and subscribe to us on YouTube, and I'll let Josh give you our social tags.
Yeah, thanks, Connor. Social tags, don't worry about those. You can see them in the description and go onto our profile as always. What I will do is ballot for people to comment and give us who they think they would have taken in the draft. Any thoughts, any reactions to me? Please roast me as much as you want. It'd just be nice to get some general consensus out there. Maybe some angry Packers or Steelers or Vikings fans who really disagree with what I've done. But yeah, be nice to hear. Thanks very much.